Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm extremely delighted to be addressing this very, very awesome assembly this morning. Let me thank the organizers, for having me. So, by way of introduction, honestly, I am in the digital transformation space. I have about 2 decades experience across different technology leadership roles. But in the past, 10 years, I would say I've been working within the startup ecosystem and then also supporting big brands on how to respond to the challenges of, all of what the startups are doing in the market. As you can imagine, we are having unicorns, in 5 years. So all the established brands are also looking to respond. So I support them there. Today, I work in an organization where I'm a partner, Teddy Africa, and I'm responsible for growth and transformation. And then I also mentor startups for Google, Google for Africa Accelerator, and some other accelerators around the world. So that's who I am, and I'm hoping that I can add value to this conversation. Last year, I had to speak to, the team at Seplat and letting them understand that energy transition is beyond name change. I mean, you must change a lot of other things apart from just your name. So that's who I am, and I'm happy to be here. I hope that suffices as an introduction, and I can go straight into my conversation.
Yes, please. That suffices. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. So I'm supposed to be addressing this assembly on digital innovation of the African workplace. And the sub-theme is workplace, insights and imperatives for the energy sector. Digital innovation for the African workplace, insights and imperatives for the energy sector. So I don't know, Alex, is it from your side where I'm having a lot of feedback? You need to mute
somebody. Really. Not really.
Okay.
Not really.
Okay, I think it's better now. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's a lot better now. All right. So first of all, I want to divide my keynote this morning into 5 areas. Number 1, I want to define a few terms because I realize that when people use these words, ponder these words, digital transformation, workplace, I mean, at different times, people are talking about different things. So I'd like us to have a convergence of thoughts as we talk about this terminology. So I'd like to define a few terms, and then I'll talk about general workplace dynamics globally in Africa. And the third thing I'd like to address is the energy sector in general. What's happening? What do we see? What's the metabolism in the energy sector? And what does this portend as regards digital innovation in the workplace? And then I'll dovetail into talking about a concept I call scarcity versus abundance and trying to extract value from this in terms of business growth and sustainability. So those are my, 4 or 5 key points. And I'm going to run through this in the few minutes, that I have. So first of all, I mean, what do we mean by digital innovation? All right, at its very core, digital innovation is a practice of implementing modern, digital technology to solve business problems by optimizing processes, improving customer experience, and then delivering new business value. If you wanted to look at digital innovation another way, it would be called enhanced creativity, and that creativity is enhanced by digital technology. How do you leverage, digital technology to enhance your creativity and deliver compelling business outcomes? All right, that is a kind of a synopsis of what I think, digital innovation is about. And the entire, spectrum of digital innovation should deliver better business outcomes. It should deliver business outcomes across people, processes, and technology. If it does not deliver outcomes, then it's difficult to call it digital innovation. It must deliver business outcomes. Now, another word I would like to speak about is digital transformation, because it's closely related to digital innovation. And digital transformation is a process of leveraging digital technology to either create new or modify existing, business processes, all right, culture, customer experience. So the impact of digital innovation on the business is what we refer to as digital transformation. And quite frankly, I always say to people, business leaders like yourselves, that everyone will be digitally transformed. Every business will be digitally transformed. It's either you transform yourself or the forces in the market, the tectonic shifts in the market will transform you. But it's always better to transform yourself. And if you look at what I talked about, business processes, culture, and customer experience as the targets of digital transformation, you will agree with me that it's easy to shift and change business processes. It's also easy to, change customer experience, but culture is very difficult to change because people say that culture will eat technology and innovation for breakfast and lunch any day. And because culture gets built up over time. So even though you can shift processes and customer experience, culture takes time to shift. And the energy sector is a sector that is so deep into certain culture. And if you are trying to leverage digital to shift what happens in the energy sector, it's really going to be a challenge. But in this session, we'll try to address some of those cultural challenges and provide some insights to ways that we can shift them. Now, if you move a bit further on this trajectory of digital transformation and digital innovation, you get to the point of what I call disruption or disruptive innovation. And quite frankly, traditionally speaking, disruption or disruptive innovation is referred to as a process by which a smaller company, usually with fewer resources, moves up market and challenges larger established businesses. That is the traditional, meaning of disruption. But my personal way of dimensioning disruption is I refer to disruption as that thing that happens when the market moves. If the market moves towards you, you are fine. If the market moves away from you, you have been disrupted. And this is irrespective of why the market moved. Sometimes, in terms of your business processes, optimization, and innovation, you can move the market. Sometimes your competition can move the market, but at other times, neither you nor your competition can be responsible for market movement. And we see what happened with COVID-19 when the market moved towards some brands and away from some brands. But you want to, as you dimension digital transformation and innovation, you want to be in a place where you are either moving the market or you position yourself so that when the market moves, it moves in your direction, or you now build capacity and resilience so that even if the market moves away from you, you are able to navigate the vagaries of that situation and still remain in business. So, those are the few terms I wanted to kind of define as we get into this conversation. Now, what do we see happening in the workplace globally before we even dovetail into Africa and the energy workplace? We see that advancement in technology, exponential technology growth, will continue to challenge the way we work. Some jobs will be lost, but the good news is that a lot of jobs are being created and people will need to upskill to stay relevant. So the challenge of the job loss to AI is not really a big challenge because new jobs will be created. So people will need to be dynamic to upskill to be relevant in the workplace. The second thing we see that, people are continuing to look for higher rewards beyond money as the reason to stay committed to a workplace, especially younger people and younger generation. They are continuing to look for higher rewards. And so purpose-driven organizations are having more retention. And what are purpose-driven organizations? The organizations where the people, the staff, have a connection, right, to the purpose of the company. The purpose is well articulated, and the staff see a connection, and they want to contribute. Staff, stakeholders, markets, they see a connection and they want to contribute to the fulfillment of the purpose of that organization. And purpose is beyond, mission and vision statements. It's a well-crafted, is a well-crafted explanation of your MTP, your massively transformative purpose, what you are trying to achieve, and how this impacts the world if you are able to achieve it. A good example would be what Google says. Google says they want to be the people to organize the world's information and make it globally accessible to everyone. So that's a strong MTP. So every organization must build an MTP for themselves, and this MTP must be syndicated across, your staff, your people, your stakeholders, your investors, and your markets, because it forms a rallying point, and these people can, through your MTP, build a commitment to your brand. The next thing we are seeing in the workplace is that command and control and hierarchical structures are becoming unpopular. And it is the teams and the organizations that empower small teams to take autonomous decisions that are becoming exponentially successful. We see that forced flexibility is increasing. I mean, I call it forced flexibility because COVID-19 forced everyone to adopt a work from home. I mean, some organizations would never have touched it if they were not compelled by COVID-19. That continues to increase. We see a lot of adoption of the gig economy, where you hire people just to perform some tasks and you just pay them for that task, as against keeping them as permanent staff on your payroll. We're also seeing that it is now super easy to measure the productivity of individual workers. I mean, because if you're working remotely, your work can be tracked because you are working through electronic channels. I mean, so it's easier to track your productivity now than it was when you just came into the office, because before now, to say that you work for the day would be that I came to work. But these days, it's not about coming to work. It's about your productivity based on what you've done on the available digital and remote channels offered by your company. Another trend we see, just talking about work, what is happening in work, is that the whole question of work-life integration, continues to be a serious question. Of course, because work is no more something you go to. All right, work is a task to be performed. You may not have to go to work. You may have to work from where you are. So your ability to perform your functions and tasks where you are, determines your productivity. And people need to create that work-life balance within their space, because their living space is also becoming their workspace today. We also see some shifts in the policy and regulation space. I mean, a couple of regulations have come up recently, and they call it, in some parts of the West, I've heard of robot taxes, in trying to say, if you bring in a lot of robots to replace human beings, you have to pay a certain tax, trying to discourage companies from adopting robots and AI, and trying to keep people, human beings, in the job. Some very interesting developments. We also see that there are some regulatory shifts affecting the movement of goods across borders and services, all right, goods and services across borders. And we see that this happening a lot around what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. All of these are government and regulatory issues we are seeing. We've seen the great resignation. We've seen the whole jackpot tendency in the country, where thousands of our young people are leaving the country and with skills and trying to monetize these skills outside the country. It's also something we are seeing. And in the space I am, I tell the brands who are losing staff that the reason that this is not a terminal problem is because we have a pool of young people to skill, train, and replace the ones that are leaving. If our demography was different and we couldn't replace the ones that are leaving, we would have had an acute, problem on our hands. So we also see this happening, and we see that there's a greater, talent competition. Because if you're just a local company in Nigeria or Africa, you are competing with global brands for the talent, even available in your space, because people can sit down in the continent and in the country and work for some global brands and earn thousands of dollars per month. So you need to compete with global brands now, even though your business is local. So these are some of the things we've seen happen in this space. But of course, I would like to go into talking about the energy sector dynamics specifically, because that's what this conference, is about. And quite frankly, from where I sit, I see that the energy sector is hit by the dual forces of digital disruption, as well as the movement towards, decarbonization and moving towards greener sources of energy, cleaner sources of energy. And I think this dual paradox is useful for the long journey, because the cleaner energy sources, right, as you move towards cleaner energy sources, digital innovation can accelerate that journey. All right, it's actually a tool, it's actually a fuel that drives the journey towards cleaner energy sources. I mean, today, global energy crisis has underscored the urgency as well as the benefits of an accelerated scale-up of cheaper and cleaner sources of energy. Of course, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has sent, food, energy, and other commodity prices soaring and increasing. This is straining African economies that were already hit by COVID-19. And these overlapping crises are affecting many parts of the Africa energy systems. Some of the gains that we've even gotten, all right, in terms of people living without electricity, some of the gains have been lost recently, just to show the impact of what's happening. And this is increasing a lot of problems, for especially sub-Saharan African countries. Africa is also, was hit by climate change. And this is not very good. Why I say it's not very good is because the carbon emissions we contribute is not a lot from Africa. I think it's just 3% of the world's energy-related carbon dioxide emission. But we are home to 1/5 of the world population, and we are seeing a lot of issues around water stress, the floods in the country today. I live in Lekki, Lagos, and I've been warned, because it's close to the water. There's reduced food production, there's increased frequency of natural disasters, and all of this is causing pressure for the continent, mass migration and regional disturbances. And this is not very good because even though there's global problem of carbon emissions, we contribute little to that problem, but we seem to be, what we are getting back in terms of the impact seems to be more than our little contribution. I mean, the International Energy Agency, released a report, the Africa Energy Outlook 2022. I'll advise every one of you to look at that report because it encapsulates the challenges and offers some, strategic direction on how to tackle them. So let me come back to the Africa workspace, as we begin to dovetail into the meat of this conversation. There's enormous pressure to create decent jobs in all African countries. In the face of rising population and widespread underemployment, this is a serious challenge. The continent has the youngest population, of any major region in the world. 15 million African young people join the workforce, every year. And it is being said that a large chunk of the global workforce of the future will be Africans. We know that these Africans will not be useful just because they are young. Being young is not enough. They will be useful because they are skilled, especially in emerging digital skills for the future. So we need to, begin to skill our people. There are lots of skilling initiatives executed across the continent today. Big tech giants like Microsoft, Google, AWS, Amazon Web Services are scaling at scale. Foreign NGOs and governments and development organizations are scaling at scale. And then pockets of African, governments are also scaling people. But there's also an avalanche of VC funds. There's also an avalanche of VC funds, coming into the space. All right. In 2021, every 2 hours, an African startup raised $1 million. So we see that, there's a lot of attraction in Africa. But you need to ask yourself, why are these big tech giants killing Africans? Number one, the big 10 companies are skilling Africans because they want Africans. They see the young people in Africa as assets. Because if they skill this, if Microsoft skills Africans, for instance, those Africans will become competent in creating value using the Microsoft stack. So it's still it's helping us with enlightened self-interest. Why are European governments funding skilling initiatives in Africa? If they empower us to create value and stay in our continent, they will ease the pressure of migration to their country and continent. So it's enlightened self-interest. Why are VCs, chasing African startups with money? Because if you look at the continent, young population, tech savvy, a lot of challenges, it becomes the perfect place for digitally enabled value creation. So these VCs are looking for how to grow their money 10x, 20x in a few years. And we are seeing this happening where all of the startups who are becoming unicorns in Africa cannot be said to be African startups or African ventures because they were registered in some offshore locations determined by how they got early funding. So African governments and corporates must do more. we must begin to find ways to benefit from the teeming population, of our young people. We must begin to find ways to benefit. That's why in Teddy Africa, for instance, we do two things. Number one, I've talked about it already. We help business leaders on the trajectory of exponential growth, because everybody understands how to go on a linear plane, but you need some help to understand growth on exponential plane, where you are not doing 10%, 20% year on year, you are doing 10x, 20x. And we know that 10x is 1,000 times better than 10%, but not 1,000 times more difficult. So that's one of the things we do at TED. The second thing is that we've created a program. We call it Africa Tech and Digital Innovation Body of Knowledge, to train young people in universities, young graduates, NYC, to understand how to be creators of digital value. And we are partnering with brands to make this available to a lot of young people at little or no cost. Because, like I said, the workforce of the future will not be predominantly occupied by Africans because they are young. It will be because they are skilled. Now, let me, finally begin to speak about, the workplace around the energy industry. And quite frankly, employment in the Africa's energy sector will grow rapidly in the coming years. This is because, the demand for energy-related jobs, would be high between now and 2030 in sub-Saharan Africa. As we begin the rapid movement towards cleaner energy and cleaner energy technologies, we also need people to drive and fuel, this journey. Right? The effects of energy transition and workforce development will impact economic and social development, because access to energy will always spur economic activity. You cannot really unbundle energy development from economic development. It's so intertwined. So the issues affecting the workplace today will also hit the energy sector. And there's need for mass skilling and mass deployment of competent hands in tech, in energy, in digital transformation, and across all different business spheres. The last point I'd like to talk about before I begin to wrap up is to share with you a paradigm and the concept of abundance, and how this can be leveraged as a tool for business growth and sustainability in every industry, including the energy industry. Now, if you look at it, the world we live in, you can define capitalism as a commercialization of scarcity. Capitalism can be defined as the commercialization of scarcity, because, if you can get anything and make it scarce, you can build a business around it and you'll be successful just because whatever you are trading on is scarce. And we saw this a lot in the era of fossil fuels, where the people with the oil were the ones with the money. The people with the oil were the ones with the money. But today, we are seeing that it is the companies that understand the concept of abundance and how to leverage it that are becoming super successful. What do I mean? Look at Google, for instance. Google leverages the abundance of information in the world. They did not create the information, but now that they've set up themselves to leverage abundance of information, they will always be successful as far as information is in abundance, right? If you live in Nigeria, for instance, as far as there's an abundance of young people who are trying to become rich overnight, brands like Bet Niger, Baba Ijibo, and the likes will be in the money. As far as there are, people who are creating value and trying to commercialize it online, Flutterwave and Paystack and the likes will continue to hit unicorn status in a few years. There's a lady I know who's leveraging the abundance of people living in the country. She comes to your house because when people are living, they like to sell things. And she gives you a cost, a price she will pay for all your items. She doesn't select, she does not cherry pick. She says, I'll pay this for all your items. And because you're in a hurry to sell and go, it's likely that you sell. She buys it and she now sits down and begins to sell it at her own pace because she's not going anywhere. And if I tell you how much she's making right now, you won't believe it. And that's just understanding that there's an abundance of people living in the country, and this has created an opportunity that I can leverage on. As far as people are building living houses bigger than they can stay in, Airbnb will still be in the money and the business. As far as we have a lot of drivers and cars, Uber will be in the business. So how can you build abundance into your business model? Because whenever you can identify abundance, You can now work backwards to leverage smart and digital technology to tap into, convert, and commercialize abundance. That is why I keep asking the question, why do we have massive investment in solar infrastructure in places where the sun do not shine? The sunniest places in the world are somehow also the poorest places, some of the poorest places. A lot of sunshine in Africa. The superpowers who are investing in solar would rather build solar grids in places where the sun is struggling to shine. I'm hoping that this concept of abundance would drive him to build their solar infrastructure and investments at the places where the sun actually shines. Another thing, as I wrap up, I would like to talk about abundance is that people have said that data is the new oil. But I want to believe that data would be beyond oil, because they've said that data is to the digital economy what oil was to the industrial economy. But you know that data will outperform oil. Why? If you look at the way we have data in supply, data is in superabundance, right? Oil is limited in supply. Data is being created every day. And then data is reusable. In fact, the more you use it, the more beautiful it becomes. That is data. And we know that the countries and people who become rich by data will do better than the countries and people who become rich by oil. As I begin to close, right, bringing, zoning in into this concept of how to leverage abundance. India did it a few years ago when they had an abundance of people and they began to train them on emerging skills of the future. Today, as we speak, the CEO of Google, Microsoft, Adobe, Twitter, MasterCard, Pepsi, IBM, name it, Nokia, Novartis, Deloitte, even the UK Prime Minister is Indian. And so we can also, have a strategic plan to leverage all the abundances we see around us, especially of young people, to also gain economic wealth for the country and the continent. Finally, somebody made a case. We have Nigerian Export Promotion Council. Why can't we have Nigerian Human Export Promotion Council? Since a lot of the world is looking to our young people to provide skills, tech skills, digital skills, and other skills, why can't we harness that as a tool for economic growth? So these are some of the thoughts I wanted to share in this keynote. I'm so happy I was able to speak to you. I thank you for your attention.